This episode of An Abundance of Naught is brought to you by Amazon.com. Amazon affiliated with us. We're very happy about it. Please go to anabundanceofnaught.com, click on the Amazon banner, and do all your shopping as normal. Bookmark for ease of use. We appreciate it.
And TLDRgamer.com. When you don't have a whole lot of time to read the gaming news and just want the brief excerpts, visit TLDRgamer.com for the core info. Thank you to them for the hosting and bandwidth for our podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome in. It's Garrett here with An Abundance of Naught in partnership with Brad and Wade.
Oh, we're partners now.
Hello.
Partners. Yeah, well, some of us are partners. One of us is a third wheel.
We moved up in the world.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nice. Promotions all around. Does that come with a pay raise?
Yeah, 0 at a 15% raise.
Nice.
Yeah. I like to look out for my people.
You know, I'm looking for 30 next year, but I'll go with 15% this year.
Okay, good. As long as we set our standards appropriately, we should be fine. How's it going, buddy?
Awesome. How are you guys?
I'm good, I think.
You think?
No,
Well,
I'm good.
I still see all the limbs attached, so yeah, I'd say you're good.
I'm good.
Awesome.
What's new in the world? Never mind. We'll save that for the news. What's new with you?
What's new with
Well
me?
done.
I don't know if this is going to make it through or not, but I do want to give a mention just in case we're recording a new way. Hopefully it will sound like I'm in studio when our listeners listen to this.
Let us hope.
So,
But we're
hoping.
We're doing a few things differently. This is our first week giving it a shot in our new year regarding An Abundance of Naught, and we'll see how it will work out in the long run.
Absolutely. So, listeners, bear with us. We're trying to make it sound a little nicer for you, a little more professional. Hopefully get rid of the telephony sound and, a few other odds and ends. So, hopefully this works out. On a personal note, it was a pretty good weekend for me.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys... Oh, I know you're familiar with it, Garrett. The Color Run?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
We've talked about that some time ago. I did see your wife make a mention, and I thought it was pretty funny how she did that. But please, carry on.
So we ended up doing it. It wasn't the Color Run exactly. It was a knockoff version. I don't know who was first, but it's another version of the same kind of thing. It's called the Color Vibe 5K.
Okay, but can you backtrack a little bit and talk about leading up to this 5K run and the extensive planning that went involved for you to be a part of it?
Yeah, so this has been planned for a really, really, really long time. We've been looking forward to this. So the 5K was on Saturday. I got a message from my wife Thursday night going, we have no real plans this weekend. How about we do a 5K? And so I jumped on the website, and it was 11:56 p.m. and registration closed at midnight. So I squeaked in our 2 registrations, 4 minutes before they closed.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew that she was cutting it close with no notice, but I didn't realize it was really under the wire.
Yeah, it was just a last minute. Technically, from what I found on their website, registration had already closed, but apparently they had gotten such a great response that they extended registration. We got in under that extension, but even with the extension, we got in, a couple minutes before they closed it.
That's awesome.
It was just a last minute, spur of the moment, hey, let's do this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked previously, I'm sure it was in one of our earlier podcasts, in that my daughter did a 5K with her mom, but it fell on my weekend, so I was at the event and I volunteered to assist. And, whatever happens when you volunteer, if you have any degree of competence, you're asked to do pretty much everything. You end up almost running the whole thing because every other volunteer is retarded.
Has no idea.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, I just want to give a shout out for, there's various different ones, Color Vibe, Neon Run, Color Neon, something like that. Of course, the Color Run itself. If it's anywhere near you, get out and do it. They're actually a lot of fun. You don't have to run them.
It's not a race. It's not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they block the route off generally for several hours. So, if you're a walker, 5K is 3.2 miles. It's not actually that far. If you get the opportunity, take it, because it's a lot of fun. You start off nice and clean. You end up covered in colored food starch, cornstarch.
It's clean. It doesn't stain. My daughter was hoping that her shirt would be totally multicolored when they were done, and they put it in the dryer hoping it would scent. And they put it in the dryer first hoping it would kind of set in, and it all just washes right out. So, there's no harm there.
That's kind of disappointing. But, still, it's a whole lot of fun. And, even if all you do is walk it, it's still a blast. The Color Run itself, their whole motto is the happiest 5K on Earth. And it really is. It's one big street party, essentially.
They get radio stations in. They do all kinds of almost tailgating that you get to do before and after. DJs come in and just have a good time. So, it's definitely a blast. Absolutely.
So, I'd like to encourage our listeners, if there is one near you, or not just the listeners, but you two as well. Next time one comes close by there, do it. It's awesome. Get out, move a little. It's a lot of fun. So I guess this has been an unintentional commercial for Color Run.
That's right.
About a 6 minute long commercial for it, but I think it's more of a.
This is the best airtime they've ever had.
What was it called? What are those things called? The paid commercials?
Yeah, this is no endorsement. Infomercial. This is a non-endorsement, pure enjoyment.
Yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
Moving on.
Is there a way we can find if there is a Color Run near, a particular area?
If you just go to their website, go to Google and search for Color Run or Color Vibe, either one, and they have a list of all the cities that they're coming to. Color Vibe, this is the first time we've done. The Color Run, they actually do stuff internationally as well. It's not just U.S. based, so I know we do have some international audience. So definitely check it out and see if they're, even if you're not in the U.S., they're still coming to a town near you.
There you go. So you can find when it will be near you and enjoy.
That's
Absolutely. So evidently I ended up with color on the brain because, I tend to be a black and white kind of guy. I don't have a whole lot of variety in colors in my wardrobe.
Did you get fabulous?
Stuff. What's that?
Did you get fabulous?
I didn't quite get fabulous, but I was in need of some new gym/running shoes. So we started looking around, and I confused the heck out of my wife when I ended up buying some really nice red Nike running shoes with orange laces. And
some of those shoes now, they get pretty bright. Our trainer had some and she's got like 50 pair of them, but they're all sorts of different colors, and they match her workout outfits or her running outfits, and she's a spaz, but they've become far more than a necessity. They become almost an accessory.
You're addicted to running when you have each pair of shoes to match your running outfits.
Color matches,
it's dude.
Well, then there's different soles for working out, for running, for that kind of stuff too. Yep. So you get all that. But so you picked up some new red running shoes. Your wife freaked out. Thought you were having an affair.
Not quite that bad, but she was bringing out the Silver Cross and
the garlic and
wooden steak,
holy water, and
all the good stuff.
Who the hell are you, and where's my husband gone?
The power of Christ compels you.
That's right.
That's pretty funny.
There's a movie reference for old times.
Yep. What else? Anything else?
We had I think I've mentioned it before. Not far from our house, there's a covered bridge that dates back to the 1800s.
To which there is a headless horseman.
Not quite. That would be cool, though.
Would it? Would it be cool?
Anyway.
Ichabod.
So anyway, no, we went down there to the covered bridge and had a picnic.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Very cool.
It was nice. That was about the extent of my weekend.
There you go.
How about you guys? Now that I've taken up, a bunch of time.
Dude, okay,
an abundance of time.
I cannot follow him because it's like, what did I do? Taxes.
Really? That's all you did this weekend?
Yeah.
Really? That's all you did?
Oh, god damn.
Holy crap.
Went up to LA, and we also went to Hermosa Beach because family was down from Seattle. Well, family and another, but, she's so nice.
Taxes.
Might as well.
My cousin and our cousin and his girlfriend of, I want to say near 2-3 years now, we're down in Hermosa Beach, and that's about an hour north of us. It sits just north of Long Beach, which is, I don't know. Long Beach is about, traffic, pending, whatever, but not quite LA. LA County, I think. I think it's LA County. Anyway, so we rented some beach cruisers and rode up and down the beach and got a couple drinks and hung out there for the majority of Friday.
Cool.
Saturday, my cousin and his girlfriend were renting a room in Hermosa, but Friday they left the room and went up to my uncle's place in West Hollywood. Saturday, we drove up there. We went to the Walk of Fame in front of the Chinese Theater, which is a madhouse. We kind of just cruised in.
That's a major tourist trap right there.
Oh, yeah, it's nuts. And then you get all these people that dress up in costumes to take pictures, and then, at the expectation of some monetary compensation. So there was probably 3 or 4 Spider-Mans that we saw. There was a couple of Batmans with Bane. There was a guy who made a Halo, I don't know if it was ODST or a Spartan type costume.
Halo.
There was SpongeBob.
There were 2 Minions.
There was Wolverine. Just a bunch of stuff. You name it. And there's a bunch of different people. I saw Jack Sparrow. And these are not the movie actors. It's not Johnny Depp walking around. It's casual people like you and I who dress up and go and try to get you to take pictures with them in hopes that you will slip them a little bit of money for their coming out and whatnot.
Then you had the people selling things.
I just want to see a fist fight between Batman and Batman.
Wouldn't that be great?
Bane, I am Batman. I am Batman.
Then you got Bane trying to break it up. That'd be great.
Oh!
Guys, really?
Love, not war. Anyway, so we did that and kind of went to downtown, and then I forget what the street name is, but it's the oldest street in LA, which is now just a huge little, I don't want to say huge, but it's a Mexican market, not all that different than like Tijuana.
Main Street?
It's not Main Street, I forget what it's called. It's something,
it's
whatever.
Spanish, trying to think. I keep on thinking Manny Calavera from
I want to say Segundo something, but I think that kind
No.
of translates to street.
That is not it.
I don't know.
Remember.
Anyway, so we did that.
It's real close to Union Station, so...
Yeah, it's very close to Union Station. What I think that
Calavera?
Olvera?
There you go. I think that's what it was.
Caldera? That sounds about
Olvera.
right.
Olvera.
Olvera? That's probably it. So yeah, we did that on Saturday. Sunday, we didn't do much Sunday. With the exception of heightened plans for Game of Thrones on Sunday evening, which we will talk about in the Thrones podcast later.
Yeah, so let's jump in here and just plug that real quick. This season of Game of Thrones, we have broken out the Game of Thrones discussion. So those who are not interested can listen to our Abundance of Naught podcast as usual. And those that do like Game of Thrones, please join us after this podcast in a separate podcast called An Abundance of Thrones.
There we go.
Despite there really only being one throne in Game of Thrones.
Is there only one throne?
There's the Iron
There's
Throne.
only one Iron Throne, but there's lots of thrones.
I believe there's multiple thrones. I believe the big chair at Lysa's camp. It's a giant piece of driftwood, could be considered a throne. I believe Khaleesi acquires herself a throne in, God, what's the name of that continent? Anyway, over there.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that later in separate podcasts. Join us if you're a fan. If you're not, we're sorry we talked about it this long.
And to be honest, why aren't you? Moving on.
Yes, indeed. Moving on, I think it's time for movies. In the movies this week, obviously, we had Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which came out. Neither of us had a chance to go see it. It is on the docket for this coming weekend. So if you haven't seen it and you're curious about it, join us next week for our impressions and critiques.
Although we could not find that Scarlett Johansson movie.
Yes, we
anywhere.
talked about that last week. The Under the Skin movie with Scarlett Johansson. It was kind of an indie film. We found out that it was not a widespread release. It may be coming to more theaters later, but it was a very, very limited release due to its kind of independent nature.
Yet she's in another movie called Lucy. That's actually a pretty weird one, if you want to...
Yeah, we'll get to that when it comes out, but it's a ways away. But in the box office, we had Captain America taking first, pulled in, get this, $95 million opening weekend.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whew,
Maybe
nice.
fact checkers can quickly take a look and see what their budget was to see if they gained any profitability up front.
Fact checkers.
Noah, second week in the box office, pulled in $17 million. Divergent holding strong at $13 million. And God's Not Dead, this is another independent film that we didn't really touch base on when it came out, but it's done pretty well in the box office. I think this is its second or third week, pulling in additionally $7.8 million. Some of the other movies we mentioned last week, because they were kind of under the radar from the mainstream standpoint, they didn't even do well enough to be considered as honorable mentions. So,
Alrighty.
take that into consideration. Coming out this week, we have Rio 2, the sequel to the... was it Disney? Was it DreamWorks? You'd think I'd know this.
Why don't you
would think.
look it up?
Hold, please. No, I can't even look it up that quick. Let's see.
Carry on with the films.
So, Rio
We
2
have
coming
interns.
out. It's got 61% critic rating. I'm sure my daughter will love to see that. A movie coming out that's more down Wade's alley, Oculus, at 89%. This looks like a very funky-looking horror movie. I don't really know what it's about either. Looks like tragedy struck a family, leaving the lives of teenage siblings forever changed when they conflict, or when one was convicted a brutal murder or something along those lines. Something crazy. Finally, a movie called Draft Day with Kevin Costner and Jennifer Garner. This is kind of the behind the scenes of the NFL draft. I am not an NFL fan, but from the trailers I've seen, I am curious about this movie. Currently, it does not have a critic rating. There's a fair amount of independent films, but judging as those went so horribly wrong, us talking about them last week, we will not bring any of them up this week. And I think that's going to do it for movies.
Okay, fact checkers are back. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, had a budget of $170 million.
170 or 117?
170.
Okay, well they've taken a big chunk out of that so far.
And Rio 2 are complements of Blue Sky Studios and 20th Century Fox Animation.
Okay, so neither DreamWorks or that's why they didn't make sense to me. All right, That's it for movies. We will get into some news with Brad.
Let's do the news. So we have talked in previous episodes about the Comcast Time Warner merger, or the proposed Comcast Time Warner merger. This week they filed the paperwork with the Federal Communications Commission to get this paperwork or get the procedure started to begin the merger. Because they are such major players, they have to get approval. They can't just buy each other. On the same day that they filed their merger paperwork, the Consumerist magazine has announced that Comcast has won an award.
Hooray!
It's their annual poll for the worst company in America.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah. This is the second time they've won their award, dubbed the Golden Poo Trophy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The last time they won was back in 2010, so not actually that long ago.
They knocked out the 2-year reigning, former champions now, EA. So,
yes.
Because of this merger, do they have to file paperwork to verify that it's not going to be a monopoly, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a whole anti-competition thing.
In which the Golden Poo will be in the center office.
They're almost a shoo-in for next year. Given the way the cable industry is comprised, I would be surprised if there is any pushback from the FCC. They're not going to take a whole lot of, if any, competition out of the market. I mean, you consider each region generally only has one cable carrier. Your competition comes from, you can get satellite or you can get through the phone company, right? Yeah. Few, if any, places have multiple cable carriers.
I think locally for us, we have the option of Cox or Time Warner from a cable standpoint. But Cox, I think, down for us in Orange County, I think Cox is kind of the reigning supreme. And then, like you said, you've got the satellite options, of which you have either DirecTV or Dish Network.
Right, but that's where your options come from. If we're if we're talking strictly from a cable sense, very few places have any options. So merging Comcast and Time Warner is not going to reduce competition in the market much, if at all, because guess what? There isn't any.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cell phone industry, where a lot of people don't know this, in that Verizon, at least down here, and I think globally, there's certain areas in certain cities that only one carrier dominates. So sometimes Verizon's got an area and AT&T can't touch it, but there's spots for AT&T that Verizon can't touch, and it's kind of this little contract deal they have with each other that, within the same area of decent coverage, we won't step on each other's toes to a degree.
Well, there's a reason for that. If you reach back into history, Verizon and AT&T both are remnants of the original Bell telephone. Back in, I want to say it was the 70s or 80s, when the government forced Bell Telephone to break up because it was the only phone company. It was a singular monopoly. They broke them up into what became known as the Baby Bells. There were 7 of them. Verizon was Bell Atlantic, which they got the region from New Jersey to Virginia.
Okay.
So that's their primary, their old stomping ground. They're based in New York. They're a Northeast company. That was their region. Now, in the years since, most of the Baby Bells have started to merge back into, single companies again, instead of all these various subdivisions. AT&T is the same way. AT&T was part of the broken up
Bell
laboratories.
They're coming back, forming the rituals to resummon the monster.
That's right.
It's one way to look at it.
It shall rise again.
Very interesting. Okay.
AT&T was Southwestern Bell, so the Southwest area.
Got it.
Yep.
Very cool.
For what that's worth.
There you go. This has been an abundance of not. Wade, you've got something to bring to the table today.
We do. It's, I think, something that will bring a bit of discussion with the 3 of us.
No.
Not
that. No, not that.
Thank God it's not a DRM.
What? DRM?
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Because it's not.
Speaking of DRM.
Xbox
I can
One.
segue from anything.
I guess we just need to be silent so he can't.
Okay, Xbox One.
Microsoft Xbox One has announced.
Microsoft makes Xbox One?
Yes.
I thought that was Nintendo.
Congratulations.
I thought Atari made
Shut up,
Xbox.
Gary.
Okay.
Has announced backwards compatibility for the Xbox One. Now,
to what?
To
just the 360 or
I
all the
believe.
way back?
I just played to the 360. Now, actually, I'm kind of against this. And I'm...
Why?
Well, it brings to my head an old proverb that says, you cannot move forward if you are tied to the past. Now, I say that in thinking, if we are keeping to want to use backwards compatibility, how far are we going to be able to upgrade technology if we're going to be tied to our games from the previous console generation? You know, we keep on talking about how these games are locked at 30 frames per second, don't have any kind of FOV, which, Garrett, you could go on for a while. And we're not going to... I don't think we're going to see any kind of major push in the technology for the consoles if we're keeping tied to the console behind it. As you've seen, Garrett, you've got a PS2, which you're playing on you played on a high-definition TV. It looked like, well, crap. Right?
I don't recall my PS2 looking like crap. I recall
when you played it on a high-definition TV.
PS1 games looking like crap on a PS2. I recall old movies looking like crap on a high-definition TV. I don't recall PlayStation 2 looking all that horrible.
Well, let me throw in the other side here and play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Well, please, but I'm actually, before you do, I actually want to give a slight little bit of applause, because this is actually, Wade took a good stance here and actually makes a good point. But please, Satan, take over.
Thank you. That would be Satan to you.
Oh, my apologies.
Well done.
Sorry, Lou.
Mr. Cypher, if you please. So, I don't know the exact technology of how Microsoft is doing this, but when they did the backwards compatibility in the 360 for the original Xbox games, the way they did that was by implementing a virtual software layer. So, this was one of the reasons why not all of the original Xbox games played on the 360. It depended on what they were able to emulate. So when you put in an Xbox game into the 360, if it was one of the supported games, it actually started, in essence, an emulator. It ran a virtual Xbox on top of the 360.
And this would be doing the same thing.
If they're doing the same thing, then I don't see how you're sacrificing anything at all. Your Xbox One can be as advanced and futuristic and as forward capable as you want it to be. And when you throw a 360 game in it, it has enough horsepower and enough, enough processing power behind it that it can, in memory and software, completely emulate a 360 so that the game doesn't know any different. Now, yes, granted, the 360 game is not going to be able to take advantage of the advanced features of the One, but you're not necessarily sacrificing anything by having that capability in the console.
I want to give a brief history lesson here, too, that a lot of people may or may not know, but when Microsoft developed the original Xbox, they actually third-partied a lot of the coding to outside sources, especially when it came to decoding and playing the games. And when they went to the 360, those third-party company or companies couldn't make a deal, whether they wanted more money and Microsoft said no, or Microsoft just said, you know what, we can do this ourselves. And I was under the impression that that was a big reason why a lot of Xbox original games couldn't be played on the 360, because Microsoft now had to back into those processes that were done originally by somebody else.
That's a very good possibility. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I know there was third parties involved in the original Xbox because
Right.
Microsoft had
They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, they had no history in the industry.
Right.
They had no industry in the industry?
No history in the industry.
Okay. I heard that wrong.
Yes, you did.
So, but, my point is that you can still have the futuristic hardware without sacrificing backwards compatibility if you do it as a software emulation.
And you also have to ask yourself, when you talk about older games looking like crap on a TV, is it really because they look like crap? Or is it because we've gotten so used to the newer graphics that we get that the older style graphics that we are now no longer familiar with seem inferior because they are?
By comparison.
Exactly.
Okay, I see where everything is going here, but let me ask you this, Brett. Have there been times where certain components become unusable? As technology, both in computers, in consoles, where certain technology is not compatible with the increasing upgrades of another. Say, like a graphics card is no longer compatible with a certain motherboard.
Of course.
That's going up further.
Absolutely.
Or RAM, you need more RAM to run processes on a system, or you need a faster processor to operate things, or you need a bigger hard drive to store your stuff.
Okay, now does that also run with software?
Not if you run a virtual machine in there. I mean, obviously, if you have a old computer game, say it's designed for Windows 95, and you now are running Windows Millennium Edition, Millennium Edition can't or won't run some of the old processes, but you can still create a virtual machine in that Windows Millennium Edition to run Windows 95 to play those games in that virtual machine, and that's what Microsoft is doing.
I'm just wondering if we no longer care about backwards compatibility, that how far of a technology increase we would see in consoles.
How much are you willing to pay for one?
I don't know.
When a Titan video card is $1,200, would you want that in a console, making a console $5,000 to buy?
Depends.
Chime in here anytime, Brad.
Hey, at least that wasn't a flat-out no.
Depends.
Microsoft, if you're listening, Wade wants a $5,000 Xbox.
That's right.
To which I will then break it apart, then put it into a computer, and
Just reformat the hard drive and put Windows on it.
Yep.
But the thing is, when you're doing it in a software emulation layer, the emulator is translating from the old hardware into the new hardware. As long as the emulator keeps updating, in theory at least, there is no point in the future at which point it breaks. New hardware comes out that's incompatible, well, that's fine, but as long as the emulator is still doing the translation between the old and the new, it will keep running.
Now, if you were trying to take an Xbox 360 and put an Xbox One game in it, that's not going to work, both from a software but also from a hardware standpoint. But when your hardware can run both systems, you just have a layer of software in there that says, okay, translate from English to Spanish to play this game. I mean, essentially is what it's doing.
Right, yep.
All right, then.
And your point of, if we keep trying to have one system to play generations old games, would that ever become an Achilles heel?
To that question, I would answer definitely yes. That has become the problem with Windows. Windows has become so bloated from holding on to the past, right? They with Windows, they didn't take the emulation approach. Windows 8. Well, I shouldn't speak to 8 because I don't know much about it, but Windows 7 certainly, Windows XP definitely still had code in it from Windows 95.
So that's interesting.
And they had to keep certain parts and pieces of it in there for backwards compatibility because none of us are prepared to let go of our old stuff. Now, had they implemented that as an emulation layer, then it didn't matter if they broke it all, because the emulator handles the translation. If they're doing it through emulation on the Xbox One, I would say good on them. That's the way to do it. If they're doing it by implementing 360 software as part of the Xbox One, then yes, in that case, I would agree with Wade. They're going to tie themselves to, problems in the future when they're trying to move forward with newer hardware. The 360 software just won't work with it.
So there you go. It is a potentiality depending on what process they use to go about it.
Yeah, it depends on how they implement it.
I'm just wondering if we are so dead set on keeping these emulators and this block, trying to keep old games, basically old software, it will be an Achilles heel for the game, for the continuing generations.
Well, so get this. Why did PlayStation decide to no longer go backwards compatible with the PS4? PS3 is. I've played PS1 games on PS3. They don't save because the languages have a disconnect, but it will play them. So maybe there's something to it.
So, but I would argue the other way as well. It has the potential to go either way. It's certainly not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why I have no interest in buying an Xbox One is because we have quite a collection of Xbox 360 games that instantly become unplayable.
Yep.
Obviously nobody's holding a gun to my head and forcing me to get rid of my 360. I can keep both, but do I want two consoles in the same family sitting in the living room? No, I'd really prefer to have just one.
I've got 3 generations of Sony.
What's that?
I have 3 generations of PlayStation. They're not all in one room.
Are they all hooked up currently?
No, because of my living situation.
Okay, but if you have 3 generations of the console, it takes up a lot of room.
Yes.
Whereas if you have one generation that can play all 3.
Oh, of course.
The customers, most of them have put in a fairly significant investment into their game library and don't want all of that to become obsolete in one pass.
Swoop, one generation change,
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And here's a question for this. How often are you going to be playing those old games?
It's a fair statement because I keep almost every game I ever buy.
But how often have you played?
It's been a long time since I've gone through and played any of those older games.
Mr. Bradley, I pose the same question.
We play our 360 games fairly frequently.
But that's because you still have a 360.
That's because we still have a 360.
Did you have an Xbox original prior to that?
No.
Did you have PlayStations prior to that?
No.
Okay, so we really can't give a
so you suck. Okay.
I don't have the history to be able to comment.
Yeah.
Yep. Fair deal. All right, well, let's move on.
Your turn.
My turn. I bring to the table this week nothing.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
That's correct.
Go directly to jail.
That's correct. I am here merely as a contributor.
Voice.
Contributor and moderator.
You are the voice in my head.
How does that make you feel?
We need to put you in padded cell right now, if that's the case.
BDBDB. So yes,
okay.
Moving on.
I'll move on then. Really cool piece of tech coming out from the U.S. Navy. In an effort to try and reduce defense spending, they've been experimenting with new weapons technology, and they are currently planning sea trials for this year for a brand new super fast gun that some of us may know as a rail gun.
This makes me excited.
I don't know how it's going to pan out from everything, but at least from a tech standpoint, this is cool.
I mean, I first heard of a railgun in the Metal Gear Solid game series, and then it was featured in The second Transformers, where it was mounted on a battleship and referenced as an experimental or prototype weapon.
Hint, hint, hint.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, that sounds cool. Let's give everyone a rundown of what a railgun is.
So, yes, a railgun is it uses electromagnetism to propel a projectile at a really, really horribly fast rate of speed.
Okay, good thing you said horribly fast. So I said horribly, it's like, what is just like, bloop.
Yeah, no, it just kind of plops out the end. No, it's unbelievable how much force this can generate. So the Navy's plan is for this to be ship-mounted,
Okay.
and potentially becoming the main, or one of the main armaments. In the length, which there's not a whole lot of specifics given yet, but in the length of the weapon, which you've got to consider is not going to be huge if it's ship-mounted.
No, but I mean, look how long some of those big guns are or were on some of the older battleships, though. I mean,
50 millimeter cannon.
you had 16-inch, diameter barrels, and they were like 15 feet long or something crazy. So,
Okay, but in terms of a ship, that's not all that long.
no, but compared to a person, that's freaking massive.
Sure, but in that length, it's going to send its projectile, which will weigh 23 pounds.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
It's going to send it over 100 miles at a speed of Mach 7.
Mach 7?
Damn.
Yes.
Holy crap.
Yes.
Okay, so just to, everyone who's a layman much like myself, Mach 1 is the speed of sound, which
Yes.
on the ground is 632 miles an hour, and the air is 700 and change.
Mach 7 is 2,382 meters per second.
Oh,
So
God.
2.3 kilometers per second.
2.3 kilometers per second. And a mile is roughly
Hold on.
1 point something.
For all our metric challenged
Hey,
folks.
we're in America. We use the standard system.
Mach 7 equals 5,328 miles per hour.
Wow. It just makes me... yeah.
Ladies and
Doesn't that just give you goosebumps?
And I'm not sure if they're good goosebumps because, finally some advancement in just the general science thing, or
Right.
bad goosebumps because the potentiality for this thing. Will these projectiles be explosive or just rely purely on their rate of travel and mass? Because, and here's the other question. I mean, you talk about terminal velocity when something is falling to Earth, in which the force of gravity and the amount of friction on that object balances out at speed. You can no longer accelerate beyond a certain point.
Right.
So this thing has to launch an object at Mach 7, but in its rate of travels, it's going to slow down immensely because it's going to try to hit that equilibrium factor.
Sure.
But, I mean, it traveled at 5,000 plus miles an hour. It doesn't really matter.
I'm just waiting for, we need anti-personnel rounds. Not just throw in nuts and bolts.
Pretty much.
Are they Are they magnetized? Hold on. They are now. Fire.
So, but where they're looking at this being a plus, first of all, is cost. The average missile, while they give a price range, obviously most of the details are, concealed, but most of the missiles that are carried shipboard currently range in price depending on what they are. The cheapest one runs around $500,000. The most expensive is $1.5 million. You figure that weighs heavily on a commander's mind when the decision is made to fire. You're pulling the trigger on a $1.5 million bullet.
Yeah, exactly.
Nuts and bolts? Not even a fraction.
The railgun round I have no idea what exactly they're putting in this because it supposedly only weighs 23 pounds, but the price that they've given is a railgun round will be $25,000. Now,
I could make a magnetic rock that's the shape of a bowling ball at 23 pounds for a lot less than 25 grand.
Well,
I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm sure I could do it for less than 25 grand.
You have some stone carvers, right?
So you figure it's going to be a tremendous saving there, and then also there's going to be the size issue. They're talking about typically a missile-carrying ship can carry a dozen or so missiles. They're talking about with the railgun, because of the size of the projectiles, they're going to be able to carry hundreds of rounds.
I wonder what the objective is for the weapon. I mean, traveling at that speed, you'd think it would be suitable to take out oncoming missiles.
That's exactly what they're talking about.
Okay, fantastic.
Missile defense, yeah. So, but think about that from the economic proposition. Your enemy launches a missile at you, and it's costing them $1.5 million to pull the trigger. Meanwhile, for that same price, you can launch, 50 projectiles.
Yeah.
And take out, as long as one of them hits that missile, you're good, and the rest of them are going downrange towards their ship.
You fire one to take out the missile and another 50 to...
The missile?
Sink the missile. Yeah, the missile. There's an H.
Michelin
There's an H in there. It's fine. It's totally fine.
We're firing a tire guy now, apparently.
It's bouncing across the water and just knocks their ship over and no damage.
So, in terms of force projections, try and break this down into terms we can understand.
Please.
The projectile leaving the railgun will have a muzzle energy of around 32 megajoules. Now, to try and break that down...
Isn't that the amount of power in Tony Stark's chest piece?
I don't know.
No? Okay.
1 megajoule is enough force to move a 1-ton object from 0 to 100 miles an hour. And it'll have 32 megajoules out of the muzzle.
32 megajoules. So it can move 32 tons of mass.
At 100 miles an hour.
At 100 miles an hour at any given duration?
Well, no. That's the muzzle velocity. Once it's out of the muzzle, your velocity.
No, I know. I'm trying to gauge a factor for a megajoule in general, but it can move. A single megajoule can move 1 ton of mass up to a speed of 100 miles an hour, or it's just like okay, and then it just stops.
So you figure that's a lot of force, a lot of energy that they're putting into this.
Considering it's only sending down a 23-pound projectile.
Yeah.
One word comes to mind: overkill. Anybody?
When you need something dead, use a railgun, apparently.
That's crazy. And awesome.
It is, like I said, from a technology standpoint, at the very least, it is just cool tech.
Very cool. I'm going to look something up real quick. If you have any more to contribute to this, I just want to cross-reference something.
Sure. So there are limited trials going to be starting soon, with full sea trials starting in 2016. They're going to be using a cargo ship for sea trials because it has the room that they can just, plop it in. And they're looking to, assuming all the tests pan out and everything works out great, they're looking to begin integrating it into warships after 2018. So as far as technology goes, 4 years is not that long.
No, it's really not. And although the information that I was looking for, I found what I needed, but it's not really correlative. But to correlate, maybe to give someone maybe a better grasp of what we're talking about, this weapon can fire a projectile from LA to New York in 30 minutes. It's actually less than 30. It's actually less than 30 minutes, but in roughly 30 minutes, it takes you longer to get a pizza. So,
yep.
You can.
Hey, if it takes you longer to get a pizza, it's free.
Well, yeah. True.
I think if you could travel...
think about the application. You could be in the Indian Ocean and hit Moscow in Russia. You know, you can be... you just about name it. You can... By the time they decide to fire anything back at you, you've got so much time to vacate or shoot it down. It's stupid.
By the time they decide to shoot anything, you've already fired 100 times that much.
It's crazy.
It's just like, oh, you're firing one? Here's 200. Enjoy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Well, and with the size and cost, they can actually tip the balance that way. You know, like I said, if you're pulling the trigger and it's $1.5 million every time you pull the trigger versus this is $25,000, yeah, I can afford to go, I don't know, send them 10.
Yeah. Do it again. And again. And again.
That's right.
One more time.
So, just for good measure. Make sure we got them.
Are they dead? Shoot them again.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I'm curious. I'll have to start seeing if there's any type of leaked images or anything like that to see what it looks like versus what some of the sci-fi representations portray it as. But definitely intriguing.
Yes, it is. Wade, over to you.
Wade, yeah, you had another topic to share.
So
with
I guess I have the my hand on the trigger now.
Sure.
All right then.
Pull that trigger.
Yeah. Fire that 23-pound bowling ball. Going back to the Xbox One, I believe the new head of that division is Phil Spencer. In a Twitter conversation, may have leaked that they will be doing away with the Xbox Live Gold. I think it's 2 paywall. Now, for those who don't understand that, the paywall is the monthly fee you pay to have access to services like Netflix and others.
So you have to pay this fee to Xbox plus your $7 a month subscription to Netflix to you see Netflix on the Xbox.
It would seem
it's a weird setup that they went with. You know, you pay your subscription fees to the various content providers, but then Microsoft wants their cut as well. Oh, you want to do it on our system? Well, then you have to pay for access.
It's very strange.
It was. Is. No, apparently not anymore.
Soon.
Hopefully.
If it's going the way that Mr. Spencer is working towards. Ooh.
That would be actually a really good thing. Because that's been one of the things that I've envied about my friends who play on PlayStations. Garrett. Yes. You know, that the PlayStation Network provides so much functionality in the free version.
Yeah, you can play all your online games with zero out-of-pocket to Sony.
Yeah.
I've never had an issue in playing online games with my PlayStation. I unbox the unit, plug in an internet cable and or engage the built-in wireless receiver / transmitter, and you're live. You sign in, you're good to go. There's no credit card, no monthly access. Welcome to PlayStation. Have a good time.
And if you do, Sony offers the PlayStation Plus package, which I hear is actually a phenomenal deal for the money.
I don't even know what it gives you. I don't even know what the Plus
I
offers.
I think from sometimes I've heard for games that are like $5.
Okay.
Throughout, multiple games for $5 throughout the month.
Nice.
So.
But yeah, Xbox has always had, that was one of my big gripes with the Xbox 360 too, was that, wait a minute, I've got to buy the game, buy the system, and pay you monthly access to play online? No thanks.
Yep, it's definitely trying to...
I can play the campaign, I can play all the local stuff, I can play, but the moment I want to play with friends, I want to do, an online co-op or anything like that, well, you don't have live gold, so that'll be another $60.
Yeah. Oof.
I wouldn't say 60, probably somewhere around like 20 or 16, something like that.
Well, if you're talking
No,
annually,
it's $60 a year.
Yeah,
$60 a year. Okay, I was thinking more a month, but yeah.
No, not per month, but it is $60 for the year, which I suppose if you ration it out isn't that bad, except, like you just said, Garrett, you get that built in on the PlayStation Network.
They definitely saw an increase of sales of the Xbox One when they did their bundle with Titanfall, which we covered in an earlier podcast. So they're really trying to get the Xbox One to a equal playing field as the PlayStation 4, and this is probably one of the first steps they'll do it, and along with the backwards compatibility, which we spoke about earlier.
Which leads us to believe that the reason some of the major people at Microsoft Gaming no longer are at Microsoft Gaming is probably not by their own choice. That's my speculation.
Speaking of which, Phil Spencer is the new head of the Microsoft department.
There had to be an old head.
Yep.
Yeah, he went to Zynga.
Yep.
For quarter after quarter after quarter, Xbox 360 has led the market, and it seems like they released the one with all the decisions that we've discussed previously and don't bear rehashing, but, all the bad decisions with the one, and it just seems like it tanked.
Yep.
I mean, they're selling well, but evidently there were enough decisions made that didn't sit well with the community that there's been some serious shakeup in the hierarchy.
Well, when you realize it's a company and they're out to make money, and if they're not feeling they're making the money they should or projected to, then it's time to make a change.
They'll find someone else who will.
That's right. If some of their systems don't
play the game the way we want to, we will find somebody who will.
Or if enough people won't play the game we want them to, then maybe we need to allow them to play the way they want to.
We need to change the game, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're nearly at our hour mark. To touch base on the YouTube scene, realize the main channel has been pretty quiet. It's been pretty rough here trying to work out the time to get content posted. It's not that it's gotten forgotten about, or the channel has not gone out of the mind. It's still very much there. Just trying to work on getting back into the groove and getting some stuff going. I've been playing Prison Architect locally. They did release a fairly new update. I'm not sure when exactly because I haven't been playing it in a while. And toying around with Minecraft Tekkit Classic that we played some time back. It's just a matter of trying to get some of that recorded and get some of that posted.
And same here for the second channel. I kind of had an issue with Windows 8. Apparently, I'm not the only one who does.
You mean like everybody?
Well, it's whenever you play the game in full mode or full screen, that sometimes, now this doesn't happen with every game. I've been playing Hearthstone and it never does it. Well, I can be playing WoW and other ones I will not mention. It minimizes the screen. Well, when it minimizes the game, it also stops the recording software.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was. I believe I found a way around it, so I believe I'll be able to get actually decent footage going out. But with a word of kind of friendly fun, a game that I spoke about way ago by the name of Fortnite by Epic has launched their sign-ups for alpha. This can be found, you can Google it pretty much, because the URL is kind of difficult to explain. They go through...
Impossibly long.
No, yeah, pretty much. But, if you're looking for... a lot of people have been waiting for this game, myself included. So, we may be able to see some of that on the channel. I mean, they did ask some pretty odd questions, like, how often do you talk about video games? And one of the ways the medium was like, do you have your own channel where you talk on YouTube where you talk about games? It's like, yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you guys offering to, are you going to let me post this? So if they do, hey, I'll hopefully have alpha coverage of Fortnite. So
maybe we can put that link in the show notes.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll look into it.
That'd be great. Well, I think that's going to do it then, Brad, unless you've got some final statements.
Nope. Keep it locked here for all kinds of upcoming goodness.
That's it. Join us next time.
That's a wrap.
Keep on gaming.
We here at Abundance of Naught do appreciate you listening in and would also appreciate you sharing us with your friends via the Stitcher Radio app and also iTunes. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and join us at Facebook. Thank you.